Just when you maybe started questioning how Jake Retzlaff exactly would leave BYU, the path is now very, very clear, and he and BYU will be parting ways easier than you would have thought.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer of the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a 13-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider, your host here on this podcast. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances today and do it with our friends at Monarch Money. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com and get 50% off your first year. All right, coming up on today's show, Jake Retzlaff. His decision to leave BYU obviously has ramifications, but the big question mark was, how is he going to pull it off? Well, the NCAA just cleared that up in a matter of hours yesterday. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about BYU's recruiting cycle in 2026 and how it is top 25, folks. It is absolutely elite and seems like it's only getting better for BYU. And we'll finish up today's show with a little bit more of the Q&A that you guys sent in via the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. So without further ado, let's dive right in on today's show. And there was a question sent to me yesterday by Dan in our Locked On Cougars Insider Group saying, Jake, you've talked about Jake Retzlaff being able to leave BYU, and then he sent a link to me from Ross Dellinger of Sports Illustrated, and I had seen this already. He said, is this the way that Jake Retzlaff is going to be able to extricate himself from BYU? Well, it sure looks that way. Because now, if you missed this, Ross Dellinger said there is a new one-time transfer portal window opening up on July 7th. That is next Monday. It will run through August 5th, and what it is going to allow athletes whose schools have placed a designated student athlete tag to leave the program they're currently at and potentially transfer elsewhere. There is no limit, as Ross notes, to how many athletes can be designated as a DSA, and the deadline to submit those DSA lists from the individual schools is this Sunday, July 6th. Now, the issue is that you will have to, as speaking of athletes eligible to be placed on that DSA list, if one, they would have been removed from the school's 25 to 26 school year roster due to new roster limits. Two, was an eligible member of a team in 24 to 25. And number three, was recruited and assured of a school of a 2025-2026 roster slot. So which of those does Jake Retzlaff fit under? Well, number two, he was an eligible member of the BYU football program last year in the calendar year, school year of 24 to 25. The clarity is that every athlete that was eligible for practice and competition on a team last year is eligible to be added to the DSA list if they would have lost their roster spot because of the new roster limits. But most importantly, another important part is designating an athlete as a DSA is entirely at a school's discretion, not the athlete's choice, and the schools have agreed to, quote, act in good faith, unquote. This was part of the House settlement negotiations to revisions of the roster limit concept, obviously that grandfathered players beyond the current roster limits to be able to stay at the universities that they were currently at, but now they have the opportunity to leave those universities, and that is how Jake Retzlaff is going to be able to extricate himself from BYU and transfer without penalty. Is it ideal? No, I still believe that losing your starting quarterback is not an ideal scenario, no matter how mid you may have thought Jake Retzlaff was. You don't take a guy who led BYU to an 11-2 campaign, and some of you would argue he didn't lead BYU there, but he was the guy under center, and he has an 11-2 record to his name last year. Obviously, he was 0-4 before that, so he's 11-6 overall as BYU's starting quarterback. But you don't take that away and think that, hey, everything's going to be hunky-dory. There will be an adjustment period here for BYU to be able to adjust to this new reality of not having their QB1 from last year going into this season. And we'll see ultimately how it affects BYU in time, because that's simply put, we have to wait to see how it all shakes out. But this is the door that opens for Jake Retzlaff to leave BYU. And I, quite frankly, I've said it multiple times this week on the podcast, I think it's in both parties' best interests, speaking from BYU side of things, as well as Jake Retzlaff's side of things, for him to exit BYU and to go find a new opportunity for himself. And I'll reiterate once again, for those of you who haven't heard already, I am hearing very clearly that Notre Dame is the favorite for Jake Retzlaff to land at if and when this all goes down with regards to this DSA designation, and he's able to clear whatever situation he needs to clear with the NCAA. I fully expect Jake Retzlaff at this juncture to be part of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish this coming football season. Is there a chance he go to another program? Yes. Is there a chance he could renege on his opportunity to leave BYU and say, hey, I want to stick it out? I guess that's a possibility, but once again, I think it's in both sides' best interest that they part ways now. And Jake goes and finds himself a new opportunity while BYU moves forward with who they've got. There's been a lot of conversation. Is it going to be Hank Bachmeier? I screwed up. PK is absolutely going to hammer me for this. He said Hank Bachmeier on radio the other day, and I absolutely jumped him for it. And he's going to jump me vice versa if he watches this podcast because I said Hank Bachmeier. That would be Bear Bachmeier, the true freshman transfer from Stanford University coming to BYU. Is it McKay Hillstead or is it Trayson Bourget? BYU will have to figure that out in due time when training camp begins. But right now, it's anybody's guess as to who that starting quarterback is going to be. I'll reiterate that I believe my money would be sitting on McKay Hillstead right now if BYU were to take on Portland State tomorrow. But once again, there's a training camp period upcoming, and the scrimmages, the practices in that period are far more critical than they ever were thought to be as we exited the 2024 football season last winter and looked ahead to this year. Think about it. In just about 8 months, no, 8 months, it's about 7 months time, we've seen a wholesale change at the helm of BYU's offense with the quarterback now exiting stage right. And now they're going to have to rediscover who they want their quarterback to be, the quarterback of the future, as it were. Be a very, very intriguing race. And of course, we'll have it covered for you guys top to bottom every single day, as we often do here on this pod. Not often, as we always do here on this podcast, making sure you guys are apprised of any and all developments to come with regards to that. But that should answer Dan's question. That is how Jake Retzlaff, it appears, is going to be exiting BYU and doing so without burning eligibility, without having to go through a waiver process with the NCAA. All BYU has to do, it appears, is designate him as a DSA, a designated student athlete, and then he'll be cleared to leave BYU beginning Monday. And once again, it'll be almost a month long here for BYU athletes, among others, if they so desire to transfer. It's a one-time deal, but it times up almost perfectly for Jake Retzlaff to exit BYU and find that next opportunity for himself. All right, coming up next, had another great question that came in the mailbag about BYU's recruiting when it comes to football in the 2026 cycle. I actually got a handful of them, but one stood out above the rest, and it deals with how good BYU's recruiting prowess has been, and we'll get into that next as we roll on right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Now, if you ever wished that you could manage your money just a little bit better, if you ever looked at your bank account and said, where in the heck did all my money go? Well, whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch Money puts you in the driver's seat. It's your complete financial command center, making you your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances so you actually can build some wealth and put some money into savings where you're not having to look at your bank account and say, hey, where'd all my money go? The best part is having everything in one app makes it easy to manage your money day to day, keep it on top of it. And the best part is you can also track any other type of account, not just your savings account, your IRAs, whatever you've got out there when it comes to your finances. They can all be brought under one app and be tracked with our friends at Monarch Money. So take control of your finances today and do it with our friends over at Monarch Money. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you all are doing fantastic out there, wherever you might be. Please continue to subscribe, rate, and review the show. If you'd like to advertise with the show, we'd always be happy to work with you guys as well. Email us, lockedonbyu@gmail.com is our email address. We'll get you in touch with our sales team and on the path to advertising success in the podcast sphere. All right, let's talk about BYU football recruiting. Now, I had a handful of questions via our Locked On Cougars Insider group. Ask about different updates. Guys like Jax Turner, that came from Dean. Also questions about Braxton Lindsay, Carter Harrison. Any news on the Pula twins? I think the biggest thing to take away is that all those guys are obviously going to make their announcements in due time. If you want my gut feeling on those, I guess 4 in this case players, the Pulas, I fully expect him to be at Utah. Jax Tanner as well as Braxton Lindsey, I think BYU is firmly in the mix for both of them. And I think, quite frankly, BYU, if they miss out on those two, be feeling pretty down about themselves. They don't have to feel down overall about their recruiting prowess in 2026. They've got a 5-star prospect in Ryder Lyons, multiple 4-star prospects, and some very high-level 3-stars that have already committed to this BYU recruiting class. And that brings me to the question from Ethan. He asked this: Jake, I saw BYU's recruiting ranking on 24/7 Sports is currently 25th in the country. Can BYU improve on that, or are they at the ceiling they can get to for this upcoming recruiting cycle? It's a great question, Ethan, but the biggest point I want to make here is BYU, and I've said it once on this podcast, I'll say it again, is having an absolutely historic year when it comes to recruiting. BYU is absolutely killing it. Yes, they are top 25 in the country right now, and absolutely could rise even further in the rankings should they pull off a few more recruiting wins, the likes of Jax Tanner, Braxton Lindsey, I think Jackson Gates. Every one of those guys, that those high-level 3, maybe borderline 4-star prospects, every single one of them will only make BYU's recruiting class that much better and thereby improve BYU's recruiting ranking when it comes to the 2026 recruiting cycle. The biggest thing they have to avoid here, and it's something that Drake mentioned on that crossover edition in passing yesterday, and something that I've been pondering as well, is that BYU, they've got a really, really good thing going on the recruiting front right now with all the momentum they built up. They have to avoid a disastrous season this year and watch some of those guys, maybe a handful of them, renege on their promises and then thereby watch your recruiting ranking fall off. I think the vast majority of guys who commit to BYU are dead set on joining the Cougars. It's a program that you know what you're getting into when you pick BYU. And some would argue that guys are obviously got stars in their eyes with what BYU accomplished a season ago. Yeah, maybe they do. But what BYU accomplished a season ago was be a national force and be in the national conversation all season long. They won 11 games. They played what I consider to be the toughest schedule in program history. Speaking of having to face 10 Power 5 opponents, they had never done that in their program's history. And I think BYU came off the better for it, obviously, when it comes to recruiting. They have parlayed that success last season into the recruiting process in 2026. But it cannot be a one-year deal. You can't have what could end up maybe being a top 20 recruiting class and then regress into the 50s or the 60s next year. No, sir, you cannot do that. For BYU to be the force I think that they hope to be in the Big 12, they've got to be, I think, at worst, a top 40 recruiting program every single season. How do you do that? Well, you win on the field, obviously. Number 2, you have a bunch of dogged recruiters on your staff who are getting after it. And I think BYU's got a really, really good staff right now that obviously are pounding the pavement, loving up their prospects. BYU's invested a little more heavily when it comes to what I call behind the scenes staff when it comes to recruiting. Not quite to the level I hope. I think they'll be continue to be adding to this, but they've done a better job on that front. And every part of that has yielded the results BYU has so far with that top 25 recruiting class. It can only get better from here if BYU keeps stacking up these recruiting wins. And they're absolutely killing it in state. Kawe Akana as well as Lopeti Moala, the most recent ones who committed earlier this week. And I think both of them are really, really solid pickups, if not outstanding pickups, considering you look at their prowess, their ability, their versatility in terms of being multi-sport athletes. BYU is absolutely, I think, crushing it on the recruiting front. But once again, A, it cannot be a one-year deal. And B, you can't go out and have a season that falls off a cliff because you lost your starting quarterback and then see some of these guys scattered to other programs. Because the thing about it is right now, every one of the guys BYU has committed are just that. It's a verbal commitment. There has been no pen to paper or DocuSign online document to lock these guys in to their grants and aid and whatever other mechanisms you use, national letters of intent, etc., to lock them in with your program. That will come in December. There are still ways to go to make sure these guys stick with BYU, and you can be assured that everybody from Ryder Lyons all the way to Graham Livingston and anyone in between in BYU's recruiting class right now are still hearing from other programs, other coaches saying, hey, you sure you're that solid with BYU? Why don't you come out, check out X University here? That will be happening for days, weeks, and months to come until that national early signing window begins in December. BYU's got to stay on it and absolutely have to continue to stack up those wins. But Ethan, to your point, it's been a really, really nice thing to watch BYU win on the recruiting trail. It's fun to watch. It's fun to track. It builds a lot of, I think, momentum in terms of other prospects saying, hey, if these guys are picking BYU, why am I not looking a little closer at the Cougars? And in turn, those guys who are committed, the Ryder Lions of the world, the Bot Mulatalos, you look at Brock Harris. Brock Harris is a fiend on social media in terms of pumping up BYU and trying to get other recruits to commit to the BYU football program. You need all of that if you want to succeed and win at the highest levels of college football, which I fully believe BYU is intent on doing. They want to win the Big 12. They want to be a dominant force at the Power 4 level. And you know what that takes? Investment. You know what that takes? It takes winning recruiting battles and winning them often. I like the track BYU's on right now. They're absolutely on a historic pace. They're going to put together what I will consider to be the best recruiting class in program history. I know that 2010 with Jake Heaps, Zach Stout, and Ross Oppo headlining it, didn't that finish, I think, number 24 in the rankings according to 24/7 Sports. But considering BYU's 25 right now, and I still expect a handful of guys from that last window of official visits for BYU to commit in coming days and weeks, BYU's assuredly going to move up in those national rankings and very well could put together their best class, at least in the modern recruiting rankings history. And these are the type of classes that could propel BYU to Big 12 superstardom, to propel them to playing in the Big 12 title game, to propel them to playing in the college football playoff and having a shout as to actually winning a national championship. It is not going to be an easy path for BYU because there are guys out there that are absolutely not interested in BYU simply due to honor code, stringent academics, not wanting to live in Provo, Utah. There's a handful of things out there that can still be used against BYU, but when BYU continues to win at the level they've been winning at, why wouldn't you consider the Cougars if you're a high-level prospect? They have proven to be keen developers of talent, and they've done it with 2- and 3-star talents for most of Kalani Sitake's tenure. Imagine getting some of the 4 stars, and in the case of Ryder Lions, 5 stars into this program. How much better, how much more development, and how much just more elite could BYU look with those type of talents and the development aspect that BYU is very well known for? Feels like the sky's the limit for BYU, and that's why, yeah, they're on a historic pace right now, but it's got to continue. It cannot be a one-off and think that you've arrived. You have to continue to win on the field and win in the recruiting sphere, and those two, they go in concert with one another. The momentum you generate on both sides only help you do more and be better as a football program. That's something that BYU absolutely has to continue to focus in on and continue to invest in it as well if they want to be a top tier Big 12 program. All right. I have answered like one scintilla of all the questions that came in. Meant to answer more of them on today's show, but we'll get to as many as we have in the time remaining. A lot of good questions regarding BYU basketball, more on BYU football, and even some, off the cuff questions as well. And we'll get to all those as we wrap up this week here on Locked On Cougars, because we're going to take Independence Day off. So happy 4th of July to everybody, but more in a moment right here on Locked On Cougars. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not done so already, what are you waiting for? Sign up for the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Get the inside scoop on all things BYU that I'm passing along to you guys, coming in the form of a text message. It's a great way to interact with the show. You can respond with questions of your own. We have Q&As. I'm passing our recruiting updates, inside intel on BYU football and basketball. Whatever I've got for you guys, you'll get it in the Locked On Cougars Insider Group coming to your phone in the form of a text message. The best part, the kicker, as I like to call it, you get a 2-week free trial before you're charged a single penny, and it's just $4.99, $5 for lack of a better term, to be a part of the Locked On Cougars Insider Group every single month. So join us today. Click the link in the show notes below, and you'll get updated on everything going on in BYU football. I just realized I left the Monarch Money overlay. If you're watching this on YouTube, you've gotten a nice overlay of Monarch Money laying there almost for half of the show here. But hey, so be it. By the way, I am dealing with a new camera setup. If you guys like it, let me know. I bought a new camera, been playing around with it a little bit. I'm really intrigued with the versatility of it. It's something I can travel with, do my podcast on the road. So let me know what you think. If you like it, you don't like it, let me know. I welcome your feedback. All right, other questions that have come in here. Tyson, great question here. You are BYU AD for a day, Jake. How are you allocating the $20.5 million revenue? What percentage goes to football? What percentage goes to other priority sports? And do all players on a team get the same amount, or is the distribution weighted upon performance? That's a great question. All right. If I were stuck in BYU's AD seat for a day and I had binding power with regards to that house settlement, I am funding at least 80% of that money, speaking of the revenue share, going to BYU football. They make the lion's share of the revenue. Therefore, they get the lion's share of the revenue share that's going out to their athletes. Next up, I would give between 10 and 15%. I would kind of depend on how much I feel like NIL, BYU basketball, men's basketball, because of the momentum they built on the NIL front, how much of that really is going to translate over. If I think I've got enough in the NIL tank, I would allocate 10% to men's basketball, and then the other 10% goes to the rest of the BYU athletes. And that may sound unfair, but it's called a revenue share for a reason, everybody. If you generate revenue, which is exactly what BYU football and men's basketball do, they get the majority of that money, and that's how I would go about it. Now, do all players on the team get the same amount, or is distribution weighted upon performance? That's a great question from Tyson as well. No, it is allocated based on priority positions: quarterbacks, defensive ends, wide receiver, like star players in football. The priority positions, much like an NFL salary cap, they're going to get more money than other players. It's just a simple fact of life. The same deal with the regards if you're a third stringer or a starter. Your money you're going to make is different, but everybody would have opportunities to make money. I'm just saying it would not be a same amount, because it doesn't square up. And obviously I think would affect, how you're being perceived out there when it comes to BYU football and the way that they go about their revenue share. Okay. Good question from Christopher here. Who are the other quarterbacks in the system, including those on missions, in light of the recent addition of Bear and Ryder Lyons? Seem like a number may have to move on in time. Now, that's the deal just with the transfer portal. You bring in guys, and some guys will get antsy and decide to exit, but that's all you can do is just bring in talent and hope it remains with your programs. Right now, in the pipeline for BYU, you've got McKay Hillstead, you got Trayson Bourget, you got Bear Bachmeier, Ryder Lyons just committed. They also have Emerson Geilman coming in for 1 year before he goes on an LDS mission upcoming. They also have Enoch Watson out in the mission field as well right now. And if you want to mention him, I wouldn't think he's a quarterback, but Nolan Keeney was a quarterback in high school who's also in the mission field. I think Keeney ends up as a tight end or at another position when he finally enrolls at BYU, but those are the guys that are in the pipeline, as I understand it, with regards to quarterbacks right now. Could there be another one or two as a walk-on down the line that comes in, and BYU will continue to recruit high-level prospects in the 2027, 2028 classes? Oh, also, Keneal Sweetwine, I probably should have thought about it. Keneal Sweetwine's also committed right now as a member of the 2026 cycle, and he's expected to enroll right away. You got a lot of 3-star talents in that, but a lot of guys BYU's high on their potential, and that's, I think, a good thing for BYU to have. It's a good problem to have high-level talents and have a well-stocked QB room. Will some of them move on? Inevitably, because there's only one quarterback that really plays. But the nice part is to have all those guys in the fold. That is going to serve you best when it comes to your quarterback play. Damian here, great question. If it's true that Bear is smart, a quick learner, and has the it factor, I want him to gain experience at ASAP. Like they say, an experienced running back is an inexperienced quarterback's best friend, and doesn't hurt to have that same thing at tight end for short passes as well. He says that if there's a 3-way tie at quarterback at the end of fall camp, knowing that the first 3 games will be the easiest opponents, that we are set with seasoned running backs and tight ends, who do you go with? It's a great question, because I have thought for a long time that McKay Hillstead would have the leg up in that regard, Damian, but I think your point is well made that Bear, if he can really get up to speed, now that's a big if right now, if he can get up to speed, maybe just go with him and take the lumps as they come, because he's a freshman quarterback. That's obviously going to come with some growing pains. But I think that BYU, if they feel like he is capable of executing the offense, I don't see why they would hold back on terms of playing him. Now, if he's not up to speed right away, those 3 games, maybe halfway through the season, could be a proving ground for McKay Hillstead to have an opportunity to prove himself to be the guy at BYU, or Trayson Bourget. Either one, really. then at that point, maybe if the season is kind of teetering at that point, maybe by that time, Bear's finally up to speed, and then you toss him in there. It's just an idea of different ways to go about it. Laramie and a couple other people asked this question as well. Are you going to have another player take Connor's spot on your podcast as your weekly guest? We are still talking about that. I've actually had let's just put it this way. A coach at BYU stopped me the other day at the BYU Media Golf Tournament and suggested 2 names of players I may consider. So, apparently it's making inroads with the BYU staff. Kind of interesting to hear them suggest ideas there. Oh, Jeff, good question here. What are the plans for a watch party for the Big 12 championship game? All right, Jeff, you got belief from BYU bucking off the downer note of Jake Retzlaff leaving. You think they're going to still make a run to the Big 12 title game? Let's put it this way, Jeff. If BYU's playing in the Big 12 championship game, I'm probably going to travel to Dallas for that game. I can assure you that I will do everything within my power to be at that game. But if not, we can find a way, maybe hang out and watch the game. I'm just saying, I would plan to hope make it there. Josh, I submitted this in regards to the Rider Lions commitment. I hope this commitment doesn't give a false sense of validation to the athletic department when it comes to recruiting resources, staff and budget. Is BYU still way behind in that area, or have they made improvements? I think I talked about this a little bit earlier. They have made improvements, Josh, but as I mentioned, they still have a ways to go. And Kalani talked about it at the media golf tournament. If you missed that clip, he said that Ryan Santiago intends to keep adding more positions and more money to the BYU football program to hire more positions. You know, that screamed to me, more recruiting staff is on its way in time. And that should be obviously a good thing for BYU. Kent, with BYU sports landing 5-star prospects and having people drafted in the top 10 of the NBA draft, what grade would you give BYU sports at this time, and can it be sustainable? And have we passed Utah in recruiting? That's a great question. Right now, BYU is number 25 in those recruiting rankings. Utah is hovering in the 60s. If you want to look at it today, BYU has surpassed Utah, but Utah has had the leg up for years in the past. So you got to continue the momentum, as I already talked about it, moving forward here. How would I grade BYU? Man, I would say they're an A right now because they're absolutely killing it. Now, the Jake Retzlaff situation is a bit of a downer note. I get all that. And a couple of you actually mentioned, hey, Jake, I'm sick of hearing Jake Retzlaff's name. You know what? It's still headline news. And until he's not at BYU, he is a part of the deal. So I think that you just have to kind of grit and bear it. But I would give BYU an A. They've won a Rider Lions sweepstakes, the 5-star prospect at quarterback. BYU was thought to never really be able to win those battles. They've pulled that off. Jaeger Demon's a top 10 NBA pick. It sure looks like AJ DeBonsa is going to be, at the very worst, a top 5 pick next year. BYU is killing it right now. There's zero doubt about this. Let's see. Other questions here. We're running out of time. We're going to roll through these as quickly as possible. If I don't get to all of them, I apologize. But a good question here coming in from Ben. Here's a question for the show. The top 3 wide receivers, Chase Roberts, JoJo Phillips, and Parker Kingston. Who looks like they'll be the 4th option? A-Rod tends to use more than just the 3, so the 4th is intriguing to me. It's a good question, Ben. And I would say right now, I would probably give the nod to somebody like Cody Hagan. Now, that doesn't preclude a Dominique McKenzie, a Tei Nakua, Marquise Taliulu, who's also still around. BYU's got a handful of guys who are intent on making that position their own. And I may be forgetting a name here that inevitably somebody's going to jump in the YouTube comments or on social media and say, hey, you forgot this guy. But you're right. I think that they have to identify that 4th guy. But if you're to say, hey, pick a guy right now, give me Cody Hagan. I got a sneaky good feeling about him. I really like that kid, and he was absolutely electric in high school. Okay, one off the cuff here. Caleb, what do you think about the Utah Jazz pick at number 5 to bring in Ace Bailey? Well, if Ace Bailey is the talent he is thought to be, it's an absolute home run pickup for BYU. He can be upset the fact that he didn't maybe want the Jazz to draft him, but so be it. The Jazz are the beneficiary, and he's going to obviously have to prove himself on the court for the Utah Jazz, or he only hurts his stock in terms of trying to force his way out of Utah. I'm just calling it how it is. Let's see. So many questions here. Morgan, are you coming out to the ECU game, Jake? Us North Carolina Cougs would love to see you. Morgan, let me see what I can do. I can tell you guys I'm going to the Colorado game. My father has his birthday during football season, and we went to the Notre Dame game to celebrate his birthday a couple years back when BYU took on Notre Dame at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. He wanted to do that again this year for his birthday, so I, along with my brothers and brother-in-law, we're all going to the Colorado game with my dad. So I know I'm going to Folsom. So if you're in Colorado, the Thomason family I know is out there, and other Cougar fans out there on the front side of the Rocky Mountains. I'll be at Folsom. So if you want to meet up, but Morgan, let me see what I can do. I'd like to go out to ECU. I'd like to go to North Carolina. I've never been. Is it Greenville, right? I think so. Maybe not. But I'd like to get out there. If I can do that, let's make it happen. Travis, good question here. Jake, did you play football? Yes, I did. I only played in high school. How many practices are there, and what happens if a player misses some of them? I think you're talking more about the college side of things, and said, would they be expelled from the football team? And what and when is the vacation window for when players and coaches can go out of town before the start of fall camp? Okay, so you obviously have to be at practice. Now, if you miss more than your fair share of practices, it's obviously going to put you on rocky ground with the football program. I don't know when or what would happen to get you, as you mentioned, expelled from the football team, but you're expected to be at every practice. There's just zero explanation as to why you're not there, unless there's like a test that if you fail it, you don't play football, like in terms of your eligibility. That's when they'll give you some time off. When is the window for players and coaches to go out of town? Right now. You're seeing some guys. I know Parker Kingston posted a video yesterday. He's at Lake Powell. There'll be a handful of players in Kalani Sitake who will be at Big 12 Media Days next week, which I will be in Frisco, Texas. But that vast majority of coaches and players kind of scattered to the winds. I know that one staff member, I think I was talking to the BYU Media Golf Tournament. I said, hey, when are you getting your downtime? They said, well, I'm hopping on a flight tonight to Hawaii. So they were already on their way out of town after that media golf tournament. Was that last week, so almost 2 weeks ago. But and then the final question from Travis: what does NIL stand for? It stands for name, image, and likeness. The things that you as an athlete, your name, image, and likeness, you can make money off of. That's what NIL stands for. All right. I'm okay. Okay, we're gonna finish up with Paul's question here because it's off the cuff, and I'm a sucker for this. Why is it called sweet and sour sauce? It is a contradiction. It can't be sweet and sour at the same time. Inquiring minds want to know. Paul, that is one of the mysteries I do not have a good answer for you on. I can just say this. As a child growing up, I absolutely despised sweet and sour sauce. My parents love it. Sweet and sour pork, chicken, like, Chinese food, like sweet and sour sauce. My parents absolutely loved it. I was just like, oh, no. I'm out on this. Then I served a mission in Taiwan. And sweet and sour sauce is not really a thing over actually in Asia that I experienced. But since I've gotten home from my mission, now I'm 38, so I'm almost, 17 years removed from returning home from my mission now. But I actually really like sweet and sour sauce now. Are my taste buds going bad? I don't know, but you're right. It is a bit of a conundrum there that sweet and sour can't really exist. But let's be honest. It kind of has that flavor profile. It has both. Now, one seems to dominate the other, no matter what type of sweet and sour sauce you have. But maybe that answers your question. Maybe it doesn't. I kind of think it's kind of interesting to go to look at that. Oh, I'm going to answer one more just because I want to do this. Robert Kidd, I noticed that Kevin Young was at all the NBA draft activities supporting Jaeger Demon. Do all coaches do that? The vast majority of them do, because it is a major recruiting opportunity. You're seen on national TV on ESPN by thousands, if not millions of people out there. They see that face, like, oh, that's Kevin Young, or who else? Other coaches out there. Mark Pope, for example, I guess for Kentucky, former BYU coach. And you think all these great coaches that are on TV all the time. Well, they show up at the draft because they want to support their player, no doubt, because they got a good relationship with that player, but it's also a chance to get FaceTime with the national media. It's a great, great opportunity. It's also a recruiting opportunity as well, because you can be like, hey, I got this guy drafted, and in the case of Jaeger Demon, number 8, he's a top 10 prospect. Come play for BYU. We'll see what we can do with you as well. That's why, yeah, it's absolutely a thing that all coaches do, if not the vast, vast majority of them. All right. I think I got to the most of the questions. If I did not get to all of them, I'll see what I can do to answer them maybe on an edition of the podcast next week. But hope you guys have a fantastic Independence Day if you're here stateside in the United States of America, because obviously it's the 4th of July, celebrating almost 250 years. Since that Declaration of Independence was signed, and crazy. Next year is going to be 250. We're 249 years as of tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Celebrate the holiday. I am going to be at Monster Jam at Rice-Eccles Stadium with my son. If you're up there and you're milling around at RES, let me know. I'd love to meet up with you guys, say what up, say hello. But as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen today. Have a great holiday. And of course, thank you for being an everydayer right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.